Bitcoin just had one of its worst weeks of the year. Price down, confidence shaken, gold ripping while Bitcoin stalls. But while markets were panicking, something way more revealing happened. At Davos this week, central bankers didn't argue with Bitcoin. They laughed at it.
I think it's a healthy competition because...
And that laugh tells you everything. Because powerful systems don't mock things that are irrelevant. They mock things they don't understand. Like, why am I shooting this in the back of a loading dock? Banks say that Bitcoin is too volatile. It's too risky, too unfit to compete with real money. Oh yeah? Then why are you so obsessed with it? Boy, I wanna know. Sounds like someone's a little scared. Sounds more like Bitcoin threatens the one thing banks can't afford to lose. I'm Oceans. This is Beyond Bitcoin. Let's go. We're taught one story about the banks. You deposit your money and they keep it safe, in a safe, locked up. But come on, you ought to know by now that that story's a bit inflated. Get it? Inflated. This was no more apparent than this past week at the World Economic Forum in Davos, when the CEO of Coinbase, Brian Armstrong, debated with François Villeroy de Guelhard, a member of the Governing Council of the European Central Bank and the current president of the Bank of International Settlements. Yeah, this guy doesn't have any reason to dislike Bitcoin. Take a look.
Governor, you have to address this. Is the euro in danger from a Bitcoin standard?
No, I'm a bit skeptical, Brian. Sorry to say it about this idea of the Bitcoin standard. We left the gold standard, but the gold was only a technical mean. What is important is what you say, Bert, that monetary policy and money is part of sovereignty. And we live in democracies, and I think the public role is key. And if we lose that, really you lose a key function of democracy. That said, I always keep repeating that money, as long as it exists for centuries, has been a public-private partnership. You need a public anchor, whatever its form is. Remember, and silver and gold were sovereign assets, so it was on the public side. And then you had banknotes, and you will have CBDC. But anyway, the most important part of payments is in the private sphere, and this is the development of tokenized private money. But this tokenized private money must be regulated to inspire trust, confidence.
It's fascinating that you say that. Brian, you mentioned a complementary role that you could play.
So I think that crypto is very good for fiat currencies. It's very good. Bitcoin is like good as a check and balance on deficit spending, because when there is a lack of trust, or people, from like in a U.S. context, if people are worried about inflation, or maybe in places like Argentina or Turkey or Nigeria, they are going to flee to the thing that they believe is going to store value more. So I think in general it's going to be very complementary, and like you said, I think it comes down to trust. And so if fiat currencies can maintain trust and not have the money printer kind of debasing everybody, then they'll survive. But if countries that have bad behavior on that dimension, Bitcoin doesn't have a money printer. The supply is fixed, and people will go to it in times of uncertainty, kind of like they did with gold.
The guarantee for trust is independence on central bank side. And we have a core mandate, and we are accountable to that. But sorry to say that I trust more independent central banks with a democratic mandate than private issuers of Bitcoin, which have a very useful role. But
Bitcoin is a decentralized protocol. There's actually no issuer of it. So that's in the sense that central banks have independence. Bitcoin is even more independent. There's no country or company or individual who controls it in the world. And so anyway, I think it's a healthy competition because if people can decide which one they trust more, and I think it's actually the greatest accountability mechanism on deficit spending.
Bill?
What's so incredible about this clip isn't the fashionably astute president's red spectacles, though quite stylish, Mr. President. It's the fact that Brian Armstrong strong-armed this supposed expert of global finance. This dude was getting schooled like he just started attending his first class of Austrian Econ 101. This clearly shows either a lack of understanding about Bitcoin from the big banks or a denial of its power out of real fear. Once we left the gold standard in 1971, democracies discovered they could run permanent deficits through fractional reserve banking, something that Armstrong clarified further. Take a look.
People think about our current financial system as kind of sacrosanct and it's the only way to do it. But if you study the history of money, really, it's got created in like 1971 when Nixon went off the gold standard in the US, and we currently have the system where most central banks don't have any link to a hard commodity underneath. I think fiat currencies are going to continue to exist for a long time, but we're also seeing the birth of a new monetary system that I would call the Bitcoin standard instead of the gold standard. And in the crypto space, that is a return to sound money and something that is inflation resistant, because democracies around the world, once we came off the gold standard, are struggling to balance their budget. They're all running deficits, and it's caused inflation in fiat currencies. And so there is a real segment of the population that is looking for a new system based on hard money.
Well done, Mr. Armstrong. And though you maxes out there, you might be looking at him like he's Bitcoin's Lex Luthor, but we can't deny the fact that Armstrong is bringing well-needed attention to the problem we all face with fiat money, fractional reserve banking, and the ever-growing leech on our necks that is inflation, just sucking away our blood term after term, grocery visit after grocery visit. If you needed a reminder, your money, that is, the thing you earn for working, it isn't sitting in some vault. It's being loaned out repeatedly, and you don't see any of that return. But the banks, they do. So what's so scary about Bitcoin to the banks is that by using Bitcoin, you're basically pulling their teeth out of your neck. What are they going to feed on then? That's why banks need bailouts. That's why they need regulators. That's why bank runs happen. Bitcoin does to banks what removing feral cats did to Macquarie Island. Australia removed cats to protect birds, but then rabbit population exploded and the vegetation collapsed and destabilized the whole island. But here's a clip from Ray Dalio to distract you from my bad analogy.
Bitcoin is limited in supply, and its perception of money, it is a form of money. It's perceived as money, as a storehold of wealth. That is unlikely to be significantly held by central banks and many others because of a number of problems it has. Transactions could all be followed in Bitcoin. One can monitor what the transactions are. Governments can monitor what the transactions are. And governments can interfere with those transactions. Just like we talked about earlier when we talked about, gold is the only asset that you can have that they can't mess with and control. You've got it. Okay. That's not true of Bitcoin. And then there are other issues in Bitcoin, like we talked about the possibility, would somebody make synthetic gold like they would make synthetic diamonds as a risk? Well, in terms of Bitcoin being cracked, broken, all sorts of things, and controlled, it has those issues. Okay, so that's how I look at Bitcoin.
So what you're telling me is that Bitcoin is too transparent for central banks. Well, if that isn't just a bit too weird, huh? Now, why would the central banks be afraid of the ability to have their transactions monitored? They are the central banks of our government looking out for our interests, right? This is exactly what banks fear the most. A system where your money is actually there is full transparency, and there's no way to make more of it.
It's much faster. There's $150 million was transferred today using Bitcoin for a fraction of a cost that no firm, including Jeremy's, would ever approach. So this is a real genuine threat to that industry, number one. Number two, you talked about counterfeiting. You can't counterfeit Bitcoin. That's a real problem with the British pound or the American dollar, is that they're being printed willy-nilly to solve lots of problems that politicians can't seem to solve, so they simply print money. Okay. People are panicked by what's happening in the banking and the central banks, and they're moving into something that they perceive as having a store of value.
Full risks of,
well, they're always talked up. The Bitcoin is always talked up by people who own it because they're speculating, right?
Everyone talks their own book.
The people use it every single day to transfer money all over the world. It has a primary purpose as a means of transferring money, number one. Number two, it's also a currency. That's why it has huge value in this economy.
I mean, what is interesting is the fact that people have chosen something that they think bypasses governments and bypasses regulation. That says something about the climate we live in.
It's a socio-economic movement which we're going through at the moment. And every time you have a socio-economic movement, you have to have a money behind it, a currency behind that, be that gold. And at the moment, this seems to be Bitcoin. I'm happy with that.
What do you mean? What do you mean it's a socio-economic movement?
What does that mean?
It's a libertarian movement. It's a by the people, for the people. Get away from big government. Get away from big industry. Get away from the people polluting our seas. and the internet and the global financial crisis. They want to be
the LIBOR
set
scandals,
apart
the
from
Forex scandals, the scandals in HSBC, laundering money. They talk about Silk Road and the Drugs Association. What about HSBC? Billions of dollars of money laundering right there. Yeah. The current scandal with Co-op Bank. People are scared by the banking in this country and around the world.
But you heard the point the commentator made there, that people think it's a post-government currency. It's not, because the government can step on it or stamp it out if they want to.
That's false.
Why?
Because it's completely outside. It's like P2P file swapping hit the music industry. This is the P2P file swapping of money. And so the banking system and the current regulatory environment, it will be as effective at stopping that as the music industry or the Hollywood industry.
Governments have already seized bitcoins, and if they
couldn't hack into it. The bitcoins that were,
if they see it as a threat, they will take it off the people. We all know that, and I don't see.
And how do they do that then? I mean, how do they take it off people if they don't even know where to get it?
It's just like I've got cash in my wallet now. There's no way of insuring your bitcoins against loss. It's one of the big fears about it. They can simply take it off you. They can get it off your computer, and if they feel it as a threat.
Emily, this is what's happening in this industry. The regulatory environment in the US and the UK versus the rest of the world. In China, India, around the world, Bitcoin is now the unbanked of the world. 6 billion people that don't really have access to banking infrastructure as such are now using these currencies, using it with their mobile technologies, and they are going to lead this market. The number one market for Bitcoin right now is in China. And if the US and the UK don't want to compete, if they don't want to compete in this market, then they can go home.
The real threat is competition. When you're a bank that's too big to fail, or even a central bank, you own a monopoly on the system of money, the thing we all use every day. Bitcoin lives outside of that system. It can be transferred peer-to-peer with no intermediary. Its transactions are irreversible, immutable, and by golly, I'll go so far to say as invincible. There's nothing like Bitcoin in our current system, which is why it's such an upset for the financial elite. Now, if you're beginning to understand why banks are afraid of Bitcoin, you'll also understand why it's crucial to have access to communication outside of the system. And if you want to keep communication lines open under any circumstances, then you need to check out sat123.com. Sat123.com makes it simple to keep in touch with your loved ones and stay connected even when you're off grid with their wide variety of satellite phones and survival gear. And for a limited time only, you can head down to sat123.com and use the promo code SIMPLY for 15% off your entire purchase. Bitcoin teaches us the importance of staying sovereign outside of our failing financial system, and with sat123.com, you can stay sovereign outside of your network as well. And if this is all starting to click for you, here's the next step: self-custody of your Bitcoin. TheBitcoinWay.com teaches you how to hold your own Bitcoin safely, without fear, without confusion, and without trusting a third party. Because the biggest risk in Bitcoin isn't price, it's not knowing what you're doing. Visit thebitcoinway.com/beyondbitcoin for a free 30-minute consultation and take control of your money the way Bitcoin was designed.
And we're going to make it so simple that every corporation around the world wants Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and so simple that every investor around the world can get Bitcoin exposure with a single click, without even a single click, through just the indexes they're already in.
Yeah, I was gonna say passive flows are gonna be directed into Bitcoin.
So it's just like
we're hijacking the financial system.
Yeah, we're just hijacking the financial system. First, we hijack people's attention. Second, we hijack the industry. Then we hijacked investor capital. Now we're hijacking the capital markets. And next we're gonna hijack the central banks. And we're going all the way until every central bank and every government and every corporation on this entire effing planet owns Bitcoin.
Simple as that.
Bitcoin doesn't vote. Bitcoin doesn't lobby. Bitcoin doesn't print. Bitcoin hijacks the system by operating outside of it. That makes it extremely dangerous, not to people, but to banks and governments that rely on debasement and dependence. Governments can regulate companies, they can regulate on-ramps, but they cannot erase a protocol once millions of people rely on it. And the smarter banks, they are starting to realize that if you can't beat it, you got to join it.
The other major inflection point is all of the large banks in the United States have gone from not banking Bitcoin 12 months ago to, in the past 6 months, I have noted and been approached by BNY Mellon, by Wells Fargo, by Bank of America, by Charles Schwab, by JP Morgan, by Citi. They are all starting to issue credit against either Bitcoin or against Bitcoin derivatives like IBIT. And so there's a sea change here. Wells Fargo and Citi have both publicly announced intent to allow the custody of Bitcoin within the banks. In the year 2026, they'll start to extend credit. And so Wall Street, the banking establishment, and the regulators have all endorsed Bitcoin as digital capital.
Bitcoin isn't anti-government, it's post-trust, and banks are starting to understand this. They also understand that once people understand this, there's no going back. Bitcoin isn't just about the money, it's also about the people. ClubOrange, formerly the Orange Pill app, is where Bitcoiners actually talk, learn, and share ideas without the noise. There's no shadow bans, just signal. Download the app or visit cluborange.org today. And if you want to reach me there directly, you can DM me. I'm there at Oshins, O-S-H-I-N-S. I read all of my messages. Thank you for watching these videos and connecting with me on ClubOrange. Banks aren't afraid of Bitcoin because it's unstable. They're afraid because it's honest. And once people see that truth, they don't unsee it. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like what you see and you want to see more, make sure you hit that like button below, or you can just leave us a comment if you like. Also, you can subscribe to the Simply Bitcoin channel for more content like this. We're coming out with it every single day of the week. And do not forget to hit that notification bell. I'm Oshins. This is Beyond Bitcoin. Until next time.